Imagine living a life free from unnecessary stress, guilt, and fear. A life where you are at peace with yourself and those around you. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? Yet, through 4 simple but profound agreements, you can transform your reality. This is the story of how I embraced the teachings of Don Miguel Ruiz's The 4 Agreements and learned to break free from the chains of self-limiting beliefs to create a life filled with freedom, love, and authenticity. Chapter 1. Be impeccable with your word. Words are powerful. For much of my life, I underestimated just how much impact my words, to myself and others, had on my happiness. I often used my words carelessly, whether it was self-criticism or gossiping about others. It was only when I encountered the first agreement, be impeccable with your word, that I realized I was wielding this power in ways that hurt me and those around me. To be impeccable with your word means speaking with integrity and saying only what you mean. It also means avoiding self-deprecating thoughts and refraining from spreading negativity. When I started practicing this agreement, the first challenge was changing the way I spoke to myself. I had a habit of berating myself for mistakes, saying things like, "I'm so stupid," or "I'll never be good enough." These words weren't just harmless thoughts, they were shaping my reality. I began replacing those harsh statements with affirmations. Instead of, "I'm a failure," I would say, "I'm learning and growing." It felt awkward at first, but over time, this shift in language changed the way I saw myself. I became kinder, more patient, and more understanding. The other aspect of this agreement was being mindful of how I spoke about others. Gossip had been a way to bond with people around me, but I started to notice how it perpetuated negativity. By choosing to speak positively or not at all, my relationships became more meaningful. I found that people trusted me more, and I felt lighter, no longer carrying the burden of unkind words. Practicing this agreement wasn't always easy, but it taught me the transformative power of words. When used with intention and integrity, words became a tool for building rather than destroying, a lesson that would set the stage for the remaining agreements. Chapter 2. Don't take anything personally. For years, I let other people's opinions dictate how I felt about myself. A critical comment from a coworker or a dismissive glance from a friend could ruin my day. The second agreement, don't take anything personally, challenged me to see things differently. Don Miguel Ruiz explains that nothing others do is because of you. It's a reflection of their own reality. This concept was a revelation. I realized that when someone criticized me, it often had more to do with their insecurities or struggles than my worth. This understanding freed me from the constant need for validation. The first time I put this agreement into practice was during a team meeting. A colleague dismissed one of my ideas with a sarcastic comment. Normally, I would have spent the rest of the day replaying the moment, wondering what I had done wrong. Instead, I reminded myself, it's not about me. That one thought allowed me to move on without taking their words to heart. This agreement also helped me let go of grudges. I used to take it personally when friends didn't reach out or when someone was short with me. But as I practiced not internalizing their behavior, I found it easier to approach situations with compassion instead of defensiveness. By refusing to take things personally, I reclaimed my emotional stability. I stopped giving others power over my happiness and started focusing on how I wanted to feel. This agreement was not just about resilience. It was about freedom. Chapter 3. Don't make assumptions. The third agreement hit me like a ton of bricks. Don't make assumptions. I realized how often I filled in the blanks with stories that weren't true. When a friend didn't reply to a message, I assumed they were upset with me. When my boss was unusually quiet, I assumed I was in trouble. These assumptions created unnecessary stress and damaged relationships. Ruiz teaches that assumptions are born from our fear and insecurity, and the antidote is clear communication. This was a tough lesson for me because asking for clarity felt vulnerable, but I soon realized that vulnerability was better than the turmoil caused by false narratives. One example stands out. I had planned to meet a close friend for dinner, but they canceled at the last minute. My initial reaction was to assume they didn't value our friendship. Instead of stewing in resentment, I decided to ask, It turned out they had a family emergency they hadn't felt ready to talk about. If I had let my assumption fester, I might have jeopardized a meaningful relationship over a misunderstanding. Practicing this agreement required me to slow down and challenge my automatic thoughts. It meant asking questions and listening without judgment. Over time, this approach strengthened my connections and reduced unnecessary drama in my life. Chapter 4. Always do your best. The fourth agreement, always do your best, might seem straightforward, but it's deeply profound. Ruiz emphasizes that your best will look different depending on the day and circumstances. This agreement isn't about perfection. It's about effort and presence. For much of my life, I tied my worth to outcomes. If a project didn't succeed or I didn't meet a goal, I felt like a failure. This agreement taught me to focus on the process instead. Doing my best meant showing up fully, regardless of the result. One day at work, I was tasked with leading a presentation despite feeling underprepared. In the past, I would have obsessed over every detail, aiming for perfection and burning myself out in the process. This time, I reminded myself, just do your best. I prepared as much as I could within the time I had and gave the presentation with confidence. It wasn't flawless, but it was honest and heartfelt. To my surprise, it was well received, and I felt proud of my effort. This agreement also helped me be kinder to myself on difficult days. When I was exhausted or overwhelmed, my best might have been simply getting through the day. Accepting this allowed me to rest without guilt, knowing I had given what I could. Living by this agreement brought a sense of peace and self-acceptance. It reminded me that my worth isn't tied to what I achieve, but to how I show up in the moment. Chapter 5. The Transformation. Embracing the four agreements didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process of unlearning old habits and adopting new perspectives. But with each small step, I noticed profound changes in my life. By being impeccable with my word, I cultivated honesty and kindness in my thoughts and actions. By not taking things personally, I freed myself from the emotional roller coaster of seeking approval. By avoiding assumptions, I built stronger, more open relationships. And by always doing my best, I found peace in knowing I was enough. These agreements became a roadmap for living authentically. They taught me that true freedom comes from within, from the choices we make and the beliefs we hold. My life isn't perfect, but it feels more aligned, more meaningful, and more joyful than ever before. The question is, which agreement will you start with today? Remember, transformation begins with a single choice. Chapter 6. The Ripple Effect of Living Authentically. As I continued to live by the four agreements, I began to notice how my choices influenced the people around me. Without preaching or imposing, my behavior encouraged others to reflect on their own actions and beliefs. This wasn't something I expected, but it became a beautiful byproduct of my transformation. At work, colleagues began approaching me differently. They noticed how I stayed calm under pressure and how I communicated with clarity and respect. One coworker even told me, "You handle things with such grace. How do you do it?" My response was simple. I try to focus on what I can control and let go of the rest. Sharing this philosophy sparked meaningful conversations and helped build a more positive environment. In my personal life, the changes were even more profound. My relationships deepened as I practiced honesty and empathy. I stopped trying to control how others felt or responded, which created space for genuine connection. For example, when a friend shared a personal struggle, I resisted the urge to offer advice or fix their problem. Instead, I listened with an open heart, trusting that my presence was enough. This shift allowed us to connect on a deeper level. Perhaps the most surprising ripple effect was within my family. I used to avoid difficult conversations, fearing conflict. But by being impeccable with my word and not taking things personally, I approached these moments with courage and compassion. My family dynamics began to shift, and we started having the honest, healing conversations we had avoided for years. This ripple effect wasn't about changing others. It was about inspiring them through my own authenticity. By embodying the four agreements, I created an atmosphere where others felt safe to do the same. It reinforced the idea that true change starts from within, and its impact radiates outward. Chapter 7. Challenges and Growth. While the journey of embracing the four agreements was transformative, it wasn't without challenges. Old habits and thought patterns didn't disappear overnight. There were days when I slipped back into making assumptions or taking things personally. But instead of berating myself, I used these moments as opportunities for growth. One of the biggest challenges was dealing with people who didn't understand or respect my boundaries. There were times when being impeccable with my word meant saying no to requests or standing firm in my values. Not everyone responded positively, and some relationships faded. While this was painful, it also clarified which connections were truly meaningful. Another challenge was maintaining consistency. Life is unpredictable, and there were days when doing my best felt like falling short. On those days, I reminded myself that my best would look different depending on the circumstances. This mindset helped me approach setbacks with grace and resilience. Despite these challenges, every stumble reinforced my commitment to the agreements. I began to see obstacles as opportunities to deepen my understanding and practice of these principles. Over time, what initially felt like effort became second nature. The agreements became a part of who I was, guiding me through life with clarity and purpose. Chapter 8. Living in Freedom. Looking back, embracing the four agreements was the key to unlocking a life of freedom and authenticity. Each agreement taught me something invaluable: the power of words, the strength in letting go, the clarity in communication, and the peace in giving my best. Together, they created a foundation for a life aligned with my values and true self. Freedom, I realized, wasn't about external circumstances. It was about breaking free from the mental and emotional chains I had placed on myself. By living these agreements, I let go of the need for approval, the fear of failure, and the weight of assumptions. I began to experience life as it was meant to be, full of love, connection, and possibility. Today, I wake up with a sense of purpose and gratitude. My relationships are stronger, my mind is clearer, and my heart is lighter. The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth every step. What about you? Are you ready to embrace the four agreements and create your own path to freedom? Remember, it starts with one small choice, one simple agreement. The power to transform your life is in your hands.